Hi, my name is Dwayne Gathers, and welcome to Civitas LA, featuring diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. These bi-weekly conversations enable us to hear from, learn from, and be inspired by a new generation of civic entrepreneurs who are forging a path forward in making our region a stronger, more resilient, and connected group of citizens. Our goal is to elevate civic discourse, foster community connections, and promote civic knowledge and engagement across the greater Los Angeles region while elevating diverse and emerging voices in that conversation. In a report commissioned by the California Office of Historic Preservation entitled Latinos in 20th Century California, it noted that in California and in the nation as a whole, the primary urban area for Mexican settlement was Los Angeles. Mexicans often ended up in Los Angeles after working in one of the agricultural valleys. And I found this particular point of great interest. Another factor adding to the appeal of Los Angeles was the rapidly expanding public transportation system, which allowed workers to take red car lines to work in the fields during prime agricultural season and to factories in off seasons without changing residence. Now, fast forward to today, and I'm going to reference a report that was recently released on September 8th that was commissioned by the Bank of America Foundation entitled 2022 Metro Latino GDP Report. And this report noted that the Long Beach, LA, Anaheim metro statistical area represents the single largest MSA by Latino population, with just over 6 million Latinos, and that this LA metro area Latino GDP is approximately $284.5 billion, larger than the economies of states such as Connecticut, Louisiana, or Oregon. Quite impressive. Sharing this rich history of Mexican, Mexican-American, and Latino contributions to the story that is Los Angeles is the work of La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, founded just over 10 years ago and based in downtown Los Angeles, which works to build and serve community through a broad array of programs in music, dance, film, art, history, culinary arts, and so much more. So as Civitas LA celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month 2022, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined in studio this afternoon by La Plaza's new-ish CEO and the first Latina to hold this position, Leticia Buckley. Leticia, welcome to Civitas LA.
Thank you so much. It is a privilege to be here. I'm very excited. And very nice on the Plaza de Cultura y Artes. Nice pronunciation.
I have to say, years ago, I studied in France, so my French is a lot better than my Spanish. but I appreciate your support there.
Well,
Leticia, congratulations again on your appointment. I know it's been a few months since you've been in this role, so congratulations. So on Civitas LA, we always appreciate if our guests will offer a brief personal introduction.
Sure.
Please.
So I am a mom, a daughter of immigrants, a wife, native Angelino, born and raised in East Los Angeles, so sort of at the triangle of East Los Angeles, City of Commerce, and Montebello. Mm-hmm. So I go deep. My family, I am first generation, and I consider myself an urban dweller. I've lived in downtown LA now for almost 14 years, raising two kids. So I've sort of seen the shift and the progression. And so for me, I've got a pretty easy commute, as you can imagine.
Right. Always nice.
And I've built my career in the arts, really, but I sort of had my rock and roll phase when I worked in concert promoting way back when and in radio. I did my own business, and then I really landed into the arts and culture field probably 15 years ago when I was doing my own business. And, everybody from the music center to the intersection of arts and government when I worked for LA County, the Arts Commission, now the Department of Arts and Culture. And, for me, I believe that creative expression, we all have it. It's in all of us, and we just need to make sure that it is both supported equitably, resourced equitably, and it's accessible to all. So that's really what my career is all about.
Mm-hmm. And Leticia, for La Plaza, it's a really important institution here in our city, located at El Pueblo de Los Angeles, which is really the historic birthplace of our city. So given that we have joyfully been able to grow our audience beyond the city of Los Angeles. Yeah. For those who may be listening in Ohio or in Germany, share with us this historic location and what it means for the city of Los Angeles and our Hispanic heritage of the city.
Well, first of all, welcome to all of those listeners from all over the place. That's fantastic.
And keep listening.
That's right, and keep listening. Los Angeles really, as you said, the birthplace of Los Angeles is in El Pueblo. We are part of it's a neighborhood. We call it our neighborhood. And you kind of look at it from Union Station all the way up to Fort Moore Monument. That whole area was really at the core and the center of Los Angeles. And really the story of LA is the story of Latinos. I always say that we are the through line. But I also recognize that we are one of many communities of color that have been in Los Angeles for many years. And, I would say El Pueblo has been a thriving community long before it was officially founded. Because the reality is we are on the unceded land of the Tongva. And it's important to recognize our indigenous brothers and sisters who occupy the land, or whose land we occupy. And we're deeply intertwined, right, with the Native American community who have shepherded this land for centuries. And El Pueblo is where immigrant communities gathered to interact, to dance, to worship. We've got La Placita, the church that my grandma went to way back when.
Okay.
Yeah, way back when. To protest. And it was the center of commerce. And again, not only for Latinos, but for Chinese Americans and Italian Americans. And it's a really important part of history that we always want to recognize. And at La Plaza is recognizing the intersectionality of being Latino in Los Angeles. And so it's a privilege to be where we are at this moment in time.
No, it's outstanding. So, Leticia, before we get into our conversation, we always like to start with just a little bit of a warm-up, which some people find the most difficult part of the conversation, and that's called the lightning round. The lightning round is an opportunity for us to get to know you and your Los Angeles a little bit better, but also for our listeners who may be visiting LA at some point, get a sense of some of LA's hot spots through your lens. Are you ready for this?
I am ready for it.
Okay. We love food, and we love the diversity of food here across our region. Share with us a favorite restaurant or two.
Sure. Well, I will say I am a mother, and so I am pretty focused on one area because I live in downtown. I found that that's what I'm talking about. But Nick's Cafe across the street from this historical park has a mean breakfast.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's on Spring when it turns into Broadway.
Okay.
It's great. Great coffee, great pancakes.
Okay, Nick's Cafe,
Nick's
downtown.
Cafe.
Got it. Anything else?
Gloria's Cuisine LA. It's a new restaurant that I discovered in Highland Park. They're on Avenue 50.
Okay.
Fabulous. Talk about food, right, and the interconnection with food and culture. And they do a mean chilaquiles, so I have to say. And I will admit that when I'm feeling fancy, I go to Astrid LA. And when I can spend a big giant part of my paycheck, to be honest, at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, it is phenomenal food.
Okay, Astrid. Okay,
Astrid
that's a first. I like that. Give us a favorite place to take a sip, whether you're a coffee drinker, a tea drinker.
Well, I went straight to mezcal. What does that say?
Okay. I didn't want to go there, but you go.
I did. I'm sorry. What can I say? It's a restaurant called Sonora's Tacos, which is in South Park and right in downtown on Flower Street. Okay. They have great burritos and delicious margaritas made with mezcal.
I love it. Give us a favorite place to take a visitor.
The Last Bookstore. No question. The Last Bookstore in downtown LA near Pershing Square.
Yeah. Wow.
Amazing.
Outstanding. We love our open space across the region.
Yes.
Are you, I don't know if you're a hiker or you go out to parks and now you've got kids. Give us a favorite hike or park.
I will say I went straight to Grand Park. No question. Grand Park in the center of downtown Los Angeles, but it really is the center, and there's so much going on there. So I love it. We can walk there, and folks come from all over the place, and you can play soccer or you can protest. Yeah. Because it's right across the street from City Hall.
Exactly.
And you can run in the fountain. I love Grand Park.
Well, that's been a great resource for the city since it came here. We love community activities and events that bring people together. Give us a favorite community activity or event for you.
I gotta say, it's the Dodger game.
Okay.
We're big Dodger fans and my family, and we go way back to the days of my grandma listening to Jaime Jarín in Spanish and watching Vin Scully on the TV in English. So, any chance to hang out with other Dodger fans, we do. Right. But I have to admit, and I know this is a little self-serving, but the La Plaza Salsa events are pretty amazing and free. And it's just so exciting to be around folks when they're that happy and that joyful.
Well, I'm gonna have to check out a free salsa event at La Plaza and do my best. Well, that's great. We really appreciate it, Leticia. Sure. This is wonderful. So, as we said in our opening, Los Angeles has really been historically, the largest home and largest population center for Latinos, in our country. And today, I believe the Latino population is just about half, on its way to about 55% by 2030. And the work of La Plaza is honoring the past, inspiring the future, and recognizing the cultural influence of Mexicans and Mexican Americans. Share with us, some background on the organization, its founding, why it was founded, and how it's evolved over these last 10 years.
Well, it's important to note that La Plaza de Cultura y Artes is actually a county facility.
Okay.
We are one of 5, and that puts us in the company of the Music Center, the LACMA, Natural History Museum. Not many people know that, and it's important that people recognize that this is actually a county facility and that it is their facility, their location. La Plaza was founded a little over 10 years ago, and really as the catalyst was Supervisor Gloria Molina at the time, 1st District. And for her, it was really important that there be a place for the stories of Mexicans and Mexican Americans in Los Angeles, a place where that story can be told. And La Plaza we're not a collecting museum, we don't, but what we do is we collect stories. We're not an art collecting museum, but we collect stories, the stories of Mexican and Mexican Americans in Los Angeles. And, really looking at what it means to be Latino, so the intersectionality and getting into the conversations around what does it mean to be Latinx? What does it mean to be Peruvian? And what does it mean? And how that all connects to La Plaza. And so for us, we're very much about bringing all of those folks together. But ultimately, we're a museum, but a cultural center. And that's a really important distinction for us.
And that work was not being done elsewhere across the region prior to Supervisor Molina's?
Correct. Okay. It did not exist anywhere else. And this was, she saw the need for an investment into social infrastructure, which is what we are. And really just championed it. And we have been very, very lucky. In the first 10 years, we've built a phenomenal foundation. And now it's looking at the evolution of La Plaza and where are we heading.
Well, I know, you've had an extensive background in large arts and culture organizations. What does it mean for you to leave such institutions, mainstream institutions, to come to lead this organization, particularly at this juncture in its own history?
Well, I worked most of my career in white-led institutions rooted in Western European art. And for me, I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that, happily, because I believe it's important that everybody needs to have access. But I felt at this moment in time in my life, I needed to be at a place that was representative of who I am and my family. And so La Plaza was the perfect opportunity. They were looking for a new CEO, and it was a wonderful match. And so for me, again, La Plaza is this place where we tell the stories. It is our responsibility to preserve those stories and to share those stories with our communities, and create a space that is welcoming and accessible to folks who wouldn't traditionally find themselves in a quote-unquote museum or cultural institution.
Yeah. Well, to that point, as you said, you're not a collecting museum, but, you're a museum and cultural center and a community center offering what I saw online, at least, a wide range of programs and services. So share with us a couple of the key programs and services that you offer.
Yeah.
And also, I'm curious, is how many people are you serving throughout the course of the year?
Yeah.
Obviously recognizing that we had, a couple bad years of the pandemic.
Yes. Although I will say, just along those notes, we were able to pivot very quickly into digital programming and virtual programming. We actually found a huge audience really open and receptive to that. So it was everything from tour exhibits of our spaces, even though we weren't open to the public, to virtual arts workshops. So we really had that opportunity. But, La Plaza, we do everything. I mean, honestly, we do. We're this wonderful indoor-outdoor space. We have 2 permanent exhibits, 3 permanent exhibits and 2 rotating exhibits.
Okay.
So throughout the year, we switch those out based on, really interest to the community, what might be going on. We currently have an exhibit by Chicana artist Margaret Garcia, born and raised in Los Angeles. She's been doing this for 50 years. This is her first solo exhibit in Los Angeles.
Wow. How do you identify and curate what comes into the
we have a phenomenal curating team who is very connected to the community and recognizes some, where there are opportunities and what stories we need to tell. We're about to open an exhibit on Saturday called Hostile Terrain 94, which is, I would say, it will definitely it tells the stories of migrants who crossed the Sonora Desert
and
didn't make it. and
Okay.
and it's artifacts and stories that have been captured, and with the again, an important story for our community to be hearing and to be participating in. Folks will be able to actually share their connections to migrant experience. And then we've got phenomenal public programs that are free. So we do, I mentioned salsa, but we have a Summer of Salsa program once a month on Fridays.
Okay.
Free.
And that runs until when?
We have our last one on September 23rd.
Okay.
So 6 o'clock, 6 to 10. So if anyone's around, come on out. And then we do a whole bunch of family programs. So we have family days throughout the year that are arts workshops. And really important to note, they're multi-generational, because the reality is when we're talking about, I mean, all families, but particularly Latino families, it's really very much multi-generational. So we have a little bit of that. We also have a working edible garden.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
In downtown LA, which often folks sort of are surprised by. And then we have what is a phenomenal new addition, which is La Cocina, which is a working teaching kitchen.
Yeah, I saw online an interview with a colleague who I guess oversees this particular program, and we had a great episode, episode 62, entitled "Nourishing Community" and the role of restaurants playing community. So, but clearly, the role of food and community and expressing one's culture and sharing that culture with others is so important. So important. So, tell me more about La Plaza Cocina and those programs that you offer.
Yeah, so we opened La Plaza. It had been a dream from the original plan of La Plaza way back 10 years ago. And we opened it in April officially, and we offer everything from cooking classes, in-person cooking classes, virtual cooking classes, to it's really a teaching kitchen. And so we're about to launch a program around workforce development and pipeline for youth into the hospitality industry.
Sure.
Because, again, we are in the heart of downtown LA, easily accessible from all places. And it is important, again, we see it as our responsibility to make sure that there's access for our young people as well. And we are actually the one of its kind museum in the country dedicated to Mexican and Mexican cuisine. So we actually have a small exhibit space.
Okay.
We are just closing our, at the end of September, Abuelita's Kitchen, which is what we call cocineras tradicionales, so traditional chefs from across across Southern California, who have roots in Mexico, and it's their recipes. So we've actually had a number of the abuelitas, the grandmothers, come and teach classes.
Oh, wow.
So, everything from, we're having a Tres Leches class coming up.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's a really phenomenal, it's almost, I say to our team that it's kind of wide open, right, what we can do with this space.
Well, I would dare say that one of our previous episode guests, who we simply love, Claire Vasoli at Pocha LA, would be devastated if I learned to make my own brisket tacos and no longer needed to go to her.
You'd still have to go. You still have to go. You would still have to go. But
I've got to check that out.
Yeah,
and you can do these virtually as well.
You can do them virtually. We're about to start our virtual classes as well. So trying to do the combination of the two, because some folks aren't quite ready yet to be in a small space.
Yeah.
But food is at the core of so many cultures.
Yeah.
For sure, in the Mexican American culture, it's like at the holidays we're making tamales, or in my house we're making bizcochos. So it's a critical part of who we are culturally.
No, that's outstanding. I know in our episode notes, and we've touched on it a little bit here in your self-introduction, I want to talk about your extensive experience as an arts advocate and administrator with LA County Arts Commission, now the Department of Arts and Culture. You're arts commissioner. You worked as vice president for Californians for the Arts. You worked on the county's first ever cultural equity and inclusion initiative. So I want to pivot and get your take more broadly on the state of arts institutions, particularly Latinx organizations. Back on episode 45, we had Betty Avila from Self-Help Graphics and Arts discussing the work of the Latinx Arts Alliance. And during that time, we were still in the pandemic. So, as we move beyond that, give us your take on the state of Latinx arts organizations, the challenges that we've come through, and how this particular organization is faring.
Yeah, so the Latinx Arts Alliance is a wonderful group of a number of arts organizations who are committed and dedicated to the Latino community, the Latinx people of Los Angeles. And it includes Self-Help, who is a long, standing community leader, La Plaza, the Vincent Price Art Museum, MOLA, Museum of Latin American Art,
down in Long
Spark,
Beach,
in Long Beach and Spark. And, really the reality is for a long time, and it continues to be the case, that we have to ensure the equitable distribution of resources. And that's at all levels, right? That's from philanthropic dollars to government dollars. And this group comes together to both, it's a little bit of, our story by us as opposed to for us. And so this group comes together to ensure that our story and our narrative is told in the way that we want it to be told, and that we are advocating on behalf of ourselves and our colleagues to make sure that there is equitable distribution. And, I will say the state of arts and culture right now in Los Angeles County and just sort of across the board in the state of California, people are struggling, particularly small organizations, which in LA County, I will tell you, it is the bulk of the arts and culture institutions that we see.
Yeah. I think something that you shared with me that I read suggested there are about 500 plus or minus arts and culture organizations across the county, I think.
The county, and arts and culture, and that's specific to arts and culture, the nonprofit. The nonprofit across the county is much larger than that, but through the county specifically, the county does invest in arts and culture. It contributes through the Department of Arts and Culture. It provides grants, but again, there is a need for some equitable distribution because there's a lot of money out there. And it's not this conversation. I often hear this conversation around, it's not about getting a piece of the pie. It's actually expanding the pie, right? And building more and getting more because it exists. And so how do we actually leverage each other, and how do we leverage the power of our collective voice to hold our, those that are supporting organizations accountable to ensure that they are supporting equitably.
Yeah, and having come out of the Music Center, which is like the behemoth of organizations, the LA Phil and others. How are you seeing, sort of private philanthropy who normally gives to the large organizations, the name institutions, LACMA, et cetera?
Yeah.
I even saw that Michael Govan at LACMA had a difficult time, getting the first big chunks of money for his facility.
Right.
How are you seeing private investment in arts and culture in our region?
It is growing, and it is growing exponentially in some ways, and in other ways slow, right? But the reality is, and I know some phenomenal heads of foundations who recognize, as we're really talking about what does it mean to be equitable, right? As we faced what has been some pretty daunting years for our field, for our industry, because we are an industry. I think we're seeing a shift and we're seeing a change, because the reality is people are recognizing again that arts and culture institutions are social infrastructure. They are part of mental health. They're part of community, thriving communities. And so it's really critical that they continue to invest in arts and culture across the board. And so that I'm excited about it. I'm hopeful.
And beyond government investment, how are you seeing sort of young professionals? I know when I had the opportunity to serve on the board of the Broad Stage out for 7 seasons out in Santa Monica, one of the constant conversations was about our ability to connect and the lack of ability to connect with young tech entrepreneurs to get them invested in arts and culture, serving in advisory capacity, board capacities, giving capacities, etc. What are you seeing with regards to sort of young professional, the next generation of entrepreneurs?
Well, I think it's fair to say that in my experience, both from the sort of marketing communications perspective and also from the advocacy side, I think particularly young professionals, but people across the board want an experience. It is no longer the days of I'm going in and I'm sitting solely to watch an opera, or I'm going to, be a passive observer of an art form. People want an experience and want a connection that goes beyond. And oftentimes it's not only the connection with the art, but with each other. And so organizations that are meeting that moment, I think are going to find themselves on the right side of that investment, both from a time and money of folks. And again, I think we can say this across the board. When I was doing work at the county for the Ford Theaters, we identified our sort of target audience as cultural junkies. Right? This idea that I want an experience and I want to participate. And how are we actually giving that to folks? And I find that once people are met where they are, they return that twofold in terms of their own personal investment.
Yeah. I love that term, cultural junkies.
Isn't it phenomenal? And I have to give credit to our agency that worked with us on that. But that and that has stuck with me because that is not just, in terms of age, right? That isn't. It is we're all cultural junkies. How are we tapping into that?
Well, I remember, back in the day, again, being on the board of the Broad Stage, particularly if I went out to a performance on a Saturday night, I always look around the audience. Who's here? A lot of older people, obviously, on West Side. Do you do that down at La Plaza? Just look at to see who's coming into your programs?
All the time. And I will say, I have worked in arts and culture in entertainment, live entertainment for many, many, many years, and I have never seen an audience that is so reflective of LA County than I do at La Plaza. It is phenomenal. I mean, it's like, I joked with somebody in sort of one of my first events. It's like, I'm like in my backyard party at my parents' house, right? Because you have a combination of folks that both, I would say sort of the Echo Park hipsters, right? And folks who just sort of go deep in terms of their roots to the music, or it's really phenomenal. And multi-generational. That's the other thing that I am really proud of as I see, and I get to step in and be part of this organization that really is representative and reflective of LA County.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we talked about some of the work. We touched on some of the work that you do around arts education. Share with us more about innovative arts education programs that you offer, either at La Plaza or in schools. I understand you have a number of partnerships in schools as well.
We do. So we do sort of two big things. We do virtual field trips, which obviously over the pandemic we launched those, and they were really successful. And we are opening back up our museum to in-person field trips, and I am happy to say that we are pretty much filled because schools were ready for it. But also our virtual field trips are filled because there's still that need people are finding in terms of the content. And so we align our work with the curriculum, but it's telling the stories of Latinos in Los Angeles. It's telling our history. So we celebrate Fiestas Patrias and themes around Dia de los Muertos and telling those stories and making those connections for these young people who aren't necessarily hearing that at school, but have an opportunity to experience it. And then we walk them around our museum where they actually get to see people who look like them. Often I've been around a number of young people who have recognized a location in one of our exhibits because it's a pretty current, and then they do an art making workshop. But I will say one of the things that I'm particularly excited about is we actually have something called La Troca. And La Troca is just that, a big giant truck. And it provides art making opportunities for folks across the county. So, for example, we had it when it was at the LA County Fair. We went and we parked there. But it is basically connecting Mesoamerican ingredients to current ingredients. And what is that? How are they connected? How are we utilizing things like corn, maize? How are we and indigenous ingredients today? How are those being utilized? And so La Troca can go. We're working. We're in the process of working with LAUSD and participating at parks and libraries. But again, it's bringing this information and this content to the communities as well.
Well, you just touched on LAUSD. So how many schools are you able to partner with in the LAUSD system?
Yeah, so that's, I don't have the exact number on that, but I do know that, we touch about 100,000. We work with about 100,000 students.
Really?
Over the course of at least during the tours that we've had in the past. We bring in, because we're bringing 30, 40, 50 kids at a given 4 times a week, right? Depending. Those numbers will scale back a little bit as we adjust. But, we work very closely with a number of schools. And the reality is capacity, right? And so we've got a big demand, which we're very excited about. So one of my goals is expanding that program further into LAUSD.
Yeah. And has LAUSD been receptive to the partnership 100%. And the collaboration?
Yeah, no, 100%. They're really great. And, I had an opportunity to meet the new superintendent recently, participate at a and we touched a little bit upon the fact that we've got La Plaza as a tool, right? It's available for learning and teaching, and I am anticipating some opportunities there and some partnerships down
Oh,
the
that's
line.
outstanding. Well, you just referenced the new superintendent
Yes.
of the LA Unified School District. I know that the immediate
Yes.
previous superintendent, Austin Butner, has been involved in an initiative aimed at trying to increase the
Yes.
resources available to schools for arts education. And something that sticks out from a previous guest that we had on probably 2 years ago, Gustavo Herrera,
Yes,
who you may know, of
I do.
Arts for LA, and we discussed the issue of funding for arts education, and it comes down to simply public funding is necessary. And I know there's an initiative on the state ballot coming up in November around arts and music education in public schools, which should generate about $1 billion in resources. Give us your thoughts on this initiative. And
Yeah, Prop 28. Vote for Prop 28.
Okay.
I think what's important about it is that, oftentimes you hear from folks, well, we don't have the money, or we're taking from. This is really a reallocation of funding, which is really important. And the reality is, music education, arts education is actually a requirement in schools at the state level, but people don't all know that. And oftentimes what happens is, you get budget cuts, and the first sort of thing that goes is arts education, when the reality of it is, again, it goes back to everybody is creative. Everybody expresses themselves differently, but it is all a form of creativity. And so how do we ensure that those students who need to have that extra connection are getting it? And again, Prop 28 I'm excited about it because I think we're headed in the right direction with it. And it will be a significant redistribution of some of those dollars.
And when administrators at the school districts say they don't have the resource for arts education, where's that money going? What
I will say this isn't about pitting one against the other, right? It's just finding and determining how that money is distributed. I will say what I have found just in my experience in working, particularly at the Arts Commission when I was there, with the LA County Arts Ed Collective, which is a county-wide initiative that works with arts educators across the region. It is just the understanding of how you actually utilize the arts to meet standards, right? Because this isn't anything different, but oftentimes you don't recognize that when you're doing math or when you're doing music, you're doing math, right? You're sort of, you have that whole combination of the two. It's just about providing the tools to teachers and administrators and folks on the front line, so that they recognize how can they incorporate the arts into what it is that they're doing. And when that happens, and when that intersection happens for folks, and that aha moment, it's beautiful and it's brilliant, because it really does open up an entirely new world of teaching.
So I was going to say, would an initiative of yours maybe already do this? Do you all provide teacher training?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We have professional development training.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And one of the we're about to kick some of that off again, because obviously during COVID. But for example, we had right before COVID, our education department put forward a training program about indigenous Mexican families, right? And connecting that to young people today. And again, a lot of those kids have never been exposed to it beyond their home, and to have the two connected. So yes, professional development. And again, that's it. It's like, it's not a question of whether a teacher is good or not. It's a question of whether they've got the resources and the tools that they need. And the support.
Leticia, that was great. On Civitas LA, we always love discussing the opportunity for collaboration and partnerships. Tell us, how does our audience get involved in the work that you're doing, and what types of collaborations and partnerships are you actually looking for to grow your work over the next 10 years of your leadership?
Well, I would say first and foremost, folks coming and visiting our museum and learning about Mexican and Mexican-American history, and the connection of all Latinx people in Los Angeles. But I would also welcome educators and artists and restaurant owners, and I'm talking folks. I mean, we work with a number of folks that are sort of individuals who are just looking to make a connection to our communities, and I am more than happy to have those conversations. And then obviously, I mean, look, we're always all looking for funders.
Okay.
I'm not going to pretend that we're not, but the opportunity to really build on something, that's what's so exciting for me at this moment of our evolution as an institution. is we get to build something and shape it how we want moving forward, because the foundation has been set, and I feel so privileged that I have come in at this moment in time. And so I invite anybody that even thinks that there's a possibility. I am happy to explore everything, and I'll be honest and tell you if it works or not.
Outstanding. We appreciate that. Well, I know you have said previously that the city of Los Angeles exemplifies the notion that, quote, as Latinos are becoming more American, American is becoming more Latino. And so, expand on that statement and how these changes within our region poses an opportunity for your organization and for us as a city.
Yeah, well, I will say first and foremost, California is ahead of the rest of the country by 20 years, just in terms of demographics, right? I mean, we know that for a fact, that what people call the minority majority, right? We've outnumbered that. We've surpassed that. And so California and Los Angeles County, as part of that, is an example and can really set the tone for how one engages with communities of color, how one engages with Latino communities. And, La Plaza for us, I want us to be at the core of those conversations. We should be at the center of those conversations. We should be the conveners of conversations that address the intersectionality of being Latino, the intersectionality of being biracial and bicultural and undocumented, and because that's all of who we are,
right.
LGBTQIA. And so for me, it's, really setting the tone and in many ways, best practices. This is how it can be done. If we'll show you in Los Angeles, because this will work somewhere else.
That's great. And I want to touch on this because you've got such a wealth of knowledge and experience in the field of arts administration and advocacy. So just for our younger listeners, how does somebody else get in the field and grow their opportunities in this field? Because as we know, from an economic development perspective, arts and culture really is sort of a principal driver of economic activity across Southern California.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the reality is, I think the last Otis report on the creative economy was 1 in 6 jobs are in the creative economy in Los Angeles County. But I would say the first way to do that is, what are you interested in? What do you love? Organizations across the board, identify those folks and reach out. I guarantee you that somebody on the other end of that is going to want to talk to you.
Sure.
It may not be everybody, but there's a place to start. And that's how I grew my experience, just by building on, the networks and building on reaching out. And I recognize that's not always easy for folks, but there are internship programs. There are a number of internship programs. I mean, young people in high school, in college, can apply for the LA County Arts Internship Program.
Right.
The Getty has the Multicultural Internship Program.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there are a number of opportunities that folks can tap into, young people can tap into, to get involved. But I would say, just first and foremost, what are you interested in? What are you curious about? That will open up and lead you to the next step.
So I'm going to ask, does La Plaza offer an internship program?
We do. We've actually, so we don't have a specific internship program, but we have been hosts to, this summer we had 10 interns.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who came through a variety of different programs. We're a Smithsonian affiliate.
Great.
And so we actually had a couple of Smithsonian Institute interns. We had an LA County intern, a Getty intern. We worked with the ICA-LA, the museum in downtown LA. They have a couple of high school students that have come through.
That's
so,
great.
Organizations are excited to bring folks in. And I will say, one of the things about internships that I want people to recognize, at least my experience in arts and culture, this isn't filing, and this isn't, it's not what one would originally like free labor. No, that's not what this is, because we don't believe in free labor.
Right.
People should be paid for their work. And these programs are all paid programs, getting in there and really experiencing how institution like ours works.
That's great. I appreciate that. Leticia, I believe you started in April, so you're not even 6 months on the job yet. So, we always want to know, what are your hopes and goals with organizations over the longer term. But so maybe you're just still trying to figure out where everything is in the organization. But, I read where you spoke to, a thought about evolving the institution into becoming an anchor cultural institution in our city that's recognized and supported for its impact and value. So what does that look like for you over the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think it starts with resources. And those resources are straight up dollars. I'm not going to pretend that isn't important, because it is. And I recognize there's to scale, right? There's scale of how dollars are distributed. That's fine. But we want to make sure that they're equitably distributed. And so I see us stepping into that role of an anchor cultural institution, because oftentimes anchor institutions, I have said this a lot, there's a really kind of negative connotation, right? It's the idea that an anchor cultural institution or an anchor institution takes all the money and takes up all the space and takes up all the, right? I want to flip that on its lid, right? The idea of cultural anchor institutions, I mean, we've got places like Lula Washington Dance Theater in South LA. We've got Spark. We've got Self-Help Graphics, institutions that are anchor institutions in their communities. They need to be recognized, and they need to be resources equally or equitably as other institutions in our region.
No, I appreciate that. Leticia, thank you for coming in today. This dialogue has been great, and we appreciate your time, and we all appreciate your service to community, and we certainly look forward to your leadership of La Plaza over the coming years. As we like to say on Civitas LA, the guest gets the final word. Give us any closing thoughts or calls to action that you'd like to share with our audience.
Well, I will say, because, I'm just going to straight up, we've got our gala coming up, our fundraising gala on October 13th. The Pobladores Gala, and we are honoring Pepe Aguilar, for those that know. He is a beloved musician in our community, and Walter Yoa Intravision and City National Bank, all who have supported Latino, our museum in particular, but Latino institutions across the board. So I would say, if anybody is interested, please come and have a party with us. Join our party.
Date, time, and location?
October 13th at La Plaza. We start at 5 o'clock. But you can find all of our information on our website at lapca.org.
And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. I appreciate that. Anything else you want to share with our audience?
Vote for Prop 28.
Okay. We are not a political show, but we appreciate we appreciate our guests sharing with our audience those things that they should know. That is wonderful. We appreciate you being on today, and we look forward to promoting your upcoming gala on October 13th. Thank you for being with us today. And after attending your event on October 13th, I want to give a shout out to our friends at Arts for LA, who will be hosting their upcoming State of the Arts Conference, which is the first in-person convening in over 2 years. And this is taking place on Thursday, October 20th at La Plaza. So visit artsforla.org and get more information about their upcoming State of the Arts Conference taking place at La Plaza. And we also want to give a special thank you to Arts for LA for their generous support of this particular episode, and really appreciate the collaboration over the course of the work of Civitas LA. So thank you for that. And thank you as well to the Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation, working to support entrepreneurs and grow small businesses across our region. So important to our thriving Latino communities, for their generous underwriting of our Hispanic Heritage Month series. And to our audience, as always, we cannot do this without you. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we look forward to you joining us in 2 weeks as we continue our Hispanic Heritage Month series, joined by Arturo Snyder of Prime Store Development, Inc. Until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. And to learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or recommend future program or guest ideas, or to consider supporting our work, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com/support. And don't forget to catch us on social media on Facebook at Civitas LA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, Twitter at Civitas_LA, and you can also find us on YouTube.